Okay, so we've just reached 11 a.m, so we'll kick off the webinar today. Thank you very much for joining us once again. Today's session is going to be on productivity within your accessplanit platform. Now, during today, firstly, we'll kick off with the agenda, what we're going to be covering off. I must also make you aware that during today's session, we do have the chat function and the Q&A function open in the Zoom webinar. So if anyone has any questions at all throughout this, do feel free to pop them in the chat or the Q&A. We'll either pick up to them as we go through the session, if it's appropriate, or we'll come back to them at the end of today's session. So any questions at all, do feel free to use the chat and the Q&A function, and we'll make sure we get to them today. I'm joined by my colleague Lauren, who will be helping to monitor the chat and the Q&A function as well. So any questions, any feedback at all, do feel free to share it in there. So to kick off with today then, what we'll be going through in today's session is we'll be looking at data grids best practice. We'll then be taking a look at utilising tasks across your business. We'll then take a look at using notes to share information. And then we're looking at bringing everything together through dashboards. So the idea of today's session is looking at increasing the productivity within your workplace by utilising the accessplanit functions that we don't often talk about as much as things like courses, resources, reporting and so on. The task, the note section, how we can use them and make the most out of what you've got on the platform, again, with the idea of increasing productivity. So it won't be death by PowerPoint. We'll go over to the platform and we'll start by taking a look at using data grids, some best practice tips and tricks around this. We'll then move over into the task section and then the notes as well. Just to reiterate, if anyone has any questions about the functionality we're going through, do feel free to put it in the chat or in the Q&A. So I'm going to share my screen with you and you should be able to see an accessplanit platform here. So this is our standard demo site we have open in front of me. And we're going to take a look at data grids and how we get the most out of data grids. So we're firstly going to go to the user section, but before we do this, and it's always a tip I give any customer we speak to, particularly if you're at the start of your journey with accessplanit, is whenever you get to a data grid, it's always worth just taking a step and working out how you can configure that data grid so it's showing you the information that's most relevant to you. As an administrator within the platform, your view of the data grid can vary from your colleagues. So the information you're seeing here might be slightly different to your colleagues, and that's fine. It doesn't impact your colleagues' view of the accessplanit platform if you change the columns. You're only impacting yourself. So any data grid you get to, and there's a very common theme throughout the modules in the platform, any data grid you get to, it's worth just taking a step and doing what we're about to go through here. So within the data grids, this is showing you all the information about the users, for example, in this area here. At the very top right of your data grid, you have the 3 dots. These are called the ellipsis. So when we click on these 3 dots, what we can do is we can change the columns that are being displayed. We can move them around in order. We can remove. So for example, we've got first name, last name here. Perhaps we want to move the main account up to the top, and we use those arrows on the right hand side and we can move them up and down. We can also add columns in here and we can take away columns just by using this plus and minus. And then we can also decide how to sort the data grid. So this middle column here, we can choose to sort it by descending on date created. These are fairly straightforward things here, but the idea and the purpose of this is that actually you can decide to have a completely different data grid to your colleagues. So in the user section, this is very much geared towards, I would suggest, a marketing person or somebody who's looking at creating some kind of marketing list. So that actually I can see everyone who's been created in date order, when their last booking was, whether their marketing opt-in, but actually in your role, you might want to see something slightly different. So rather than seeing the latest course they attended, perhaps you want to see something related to their invoices. So you want to see the invoice, the active invoice count, perhaps. If you're more finance orientated, you want to see how many active invoices these people have. There we go, we can see one. So dependent on your role and your priority within your organization, you can change the data grids to suit you. And we'll see this throughout the next couple of examples as we go into the courses section, how this can really help you in your business. The second part to data grids and making them more productive and making them work for you is the filters at the top. The filters are a really important aspect of the business. Should I say, the filters are a really important aspect of the platform in helping you get data, get to information quickly, and really improving the experience. So you can see the filter bar is automatically selected. So you can already see the filter bar whenever you go to a data grid that should be there. Now I've created some example filters here that we'll go through, and then we'll have a look at how we create them. So for example, if my role in the organization is to be looking at marketing and I need to quickly access that data, I can very easily just left click the opted in, and I'm going to get a list of every user who's opted into our marketing. And then the next stage to this, we can start to layer filters. So I always think it's best practice to have smaller filters that you can add to. So I can have a filter here that's going to tell me everyone who's marketing opt-in is yes. But then actually I want to see anyone who's made a booking this year, because these are the people we want to target. So I'm starting to layer these filters on top of each other now. Actually, I might not want to see booking this year, so I'll left click and take that off. I want to see anyone who's created in the last 12 months. So I can start to layer these filters. And actually, I want to see everyone who's opted into marketing, but I can see here there's some people who've been deleted from the platform, anonymized. So I want to make sure that we actually have the real data for them. So I need to add another filter. So on the right-hand side here, I can create new. And I want to filter on the status. Now, if you've not come across filtering before, it's a fairly simple way of working. We choose which column we want to filter by. And it's not just the columns that are visible in the data grid, it's every column that's available in this module. So we'll go through and we'll find that status. There it is. There is also a search bar at the top, so if you know what you're looking for, it can be a bit quicker. We then choose how we want to filter. Do we want to see anyone with the status of active? Or we can change it to is not in, active. So this is going to be how we're going to filter the data. So we only want to see people essentially with a positive status. Active users. And then we can hit save. And so when we save that, that adds it to our filter bar, and it's been automatically selected as well as a filter that we're using. So as an individual here, I'm starting to add these filters. I'm starting to build up this data grid that makes it a lot quicker for me to use on a day-to-day basis. Two more things on filters before we take a look at another example of this is this unapply section here. So if I left click unapply, it quickly removes any filters we've got added. Really handy for navigation. The second part I want to talk to you about as well is people who are watching this will typically be the super users of the platform that will roll this out across the business. If we click on this filter drop down, we have this option for share filters. Really handy tool in the platform. So what you can do is if you've created a bank of filters that will be really handy to share with a group of people or all of your administrators, we can select the filters in here, and then we can share these with the training administrators. So we can share these with your colleagues. So let's just choose one person from here and copy. And now they will have the same filters available to them in that particular data grid. Really helpful to improve productivity. It's really helpful with standardization. If you're filtering, and we'll see this in the courses section on particular venues, if you have a policy where you look at non-profitable courses and you have a certain parameters for that, Again, really helpful to make sure everyone's seeing the same thing, everyone has access to the same tools and functionality. So that's a really handy tool that we see people use quite a lot, which is sharing filters on the right-hand side. And then my final tip for data grids, just in terms of productivity, is this search bar at the top. Most of you have come across it, it's really handy. Just as a tip, this drop down here is what fields are being searched for. By standard, not everything gets searched for in a data grid because it might be pulling back too many results. But you can have a look through here and you can see if you search in that bar, this is where the platform's going to be searching for you. So again, sometimes people can come a bit stuck with that. They're searching for something that they can see here, but perhaps main account name hasn't been selected. Quite a common thing. So yeah, just a quick tip. Take a look through here and just make sure the right fields have been selected for what you want to search for. Okay. So we're going to stay on the theme of data grids and we're going to take a look at the courses class section. This is another data grid and we're just going to go through a few of those same examples but pertinent to the courses that you might be running in the platform. Just a reminder again, we have our chat and Q&A function open. So if anyone does have any questions, feel free to pop them in there as we go through and we'll come to them either as we're going through or we'll come to those at the end. So if I just go over to my courses class on the sidebar here, I'm just going to minimize that sidebar so I get as much data in as possible. So this is where we see people doing a lot of work. Our administrators who use our platform, this is kind of the bread and butter, so to speak. This is where they come on a regular basis, either here or the calendar. This is where a lot of course, the training administration of the businesses tend to come from, which is the courses section. This is a really good data grid that will emphasize how different views can be essentially rolled out across the business. So in here, for example, I'm looking at my course list, and let's just take a look at the columns I have selected for now. So I have the date the course was created, the name of the course, which is obviously quite handy, the start date and the end date, and the course status, whether it's available, cancelled, fully booked. Apart from date created, those are the 4 columns of quite often what we see on a regular basis. From there, we then start to build up a picture of what type of person might be using this data grid. So in here, we're looking at the number of delegates that are booked, how many spaces we have left on the course, how many spaces we have to meet the minimum. So in that course template and course date section, when you put the course has a minimum number of 4, well, how many have we got left to sell before we essentially might have to make a decision on cancelling the course? What's our fill rate as a percentage? And then, of course, where's the course taking place, the training name, and the delivery method. So this is quite handy if somebody's on the phone quite a lot and some people are calling and making inquiries that they might want to see, actually, we need to see the courses in the next 30 days, and we need to see those public courses. So if somebody's on the phone, actually, they want to book an abrasive wheels course in the next 30 days, straight away we can see a list of courses here. Might need to add available in here. So within this, we're actually seeing straight away we've got 2 courses for abrasive wheels. One has met the minimum. One of them has 2 spaces left to meet the minimum. So actually, if somebody's called up, I can make a decision that actually, if we sell this place, we're nearly at the minimum and we can run both courses. They're both viable as training courses. So straight away from this view, as an administrator, I know how many spaces are left. I can get that information very, very quickly based on the columns that I've chosen and based on the filters that I've got selected here. Just unapply all those. So if we change the columns here, again, this is part of the platform being very configurable. It might be that actually we're not too bothered about the spaces. It's not your role to be making decisions on whether courses are viable and trying to work out where delegates need to be booked onto. So actually these fill rates and spaces to meet minimum, they're not really that useful for me as an individual administrator. That's somebody else's responsibility. Actually, what I'm interested in is how many delegates have booked, how many active tasks are against that course. The delivery method I do need to see. And actually, I might need to see other information in terms of the expenditure of the course. That might be my focus of this particular section. It's completely up to you how you want to see it. Resources unallocated. Again, very common one for training administrators to be looking at is how many resources need to be allocated in order for that course to run. So again, the view of the course now changes. So now I can see the active task count is 3. So I know that there's tasks in there that need completing. But actually, in the next 30 days, I need to make sure that we've got all of our trainers assigned to courses. So straight away from here, I know in the next 30 days, I need to assign trainers to these courses, using those filters, changing what we're looking at in the data grid. I can actually make that decision and I can see something slightly different to my colleague. And the final example here, if you are at a more senior level, you're looking at the courses from a higher level, you don't need to necessarily be tracking the fill rates so closely. Actually, what you're more interested in is the income of the courses. And I want to see the profitability as well. So again, using that functionality to say how much have we sold, how much of our resources cost, what's our overall profitability. Again, I'm changing how the platform's displaying the data. Really simple, but actually it's giving me more information. It's making it more productive. I don't need to go find and fetch that information elsewhere. I can get it straight from the data grid. And combining that with the filtering, again, you can see data and you can access data really quickly. So that's using data grids and filters, changing the columns, making sure that the platform is set up and is working for you. If anyone has any questions, do feel free just to let me know. So the next part of the platform we're going to look at then is the tasks section. So using tasks within the platform, I'm going to switch this back to my original dashboard. So using tasks within the platform are a really good way of ensuring that things get done, basically. So making sure that when we're running courses, the checklist to make sure a course runs smoothly and effectively is met. If invoices are being generated and are overdue, tasks are being created, and new accounts created, perhaps a credit check needs to happen. All those kind of things can be done using tasks. So there's 3 ways you can create tasks from the platform and make them being assigned to people. The first way is the manual way. So let's say we're looking at those courses. We'll go back into our courses for a second here. And actually we can see this course is fully booked, but it's not profitable. So straight away, we've got an issue here. If I right click this course, I can see all the different modules here. In alphabetical order, I can see the task. And what I can do is I can quickly add a task. So I don't need to go into the course. I can just quickly add a task to check on the expenditure of that course because something's not quite right. I'm going to assign that to my colleague, Lauren. Thank you, Lauren. I need that task to start today and we'll give her a week to do that one. And then I can save that. So very quickly, I've added a task for Lauren to go and check on something. And this can be done through all the different parts of the platform, from the task section, from the course section to the users, accounts, invoices. You can quickly add tasks by right-clicking and adding tasks in here. There's another 2 ways of adding tasks, and this comes into the accessplanit USP, so to speak, which is the automation side of the platform. Now, the first part of this is using course templates. This is functionality we've had for quite some time, and quite a lot of our older customers use this really, really well, which is in the course template section. When you run a course and you create this template which says, overall, this is what an abrasive wheels in the workplace course looks like for us. This is the typical duration. This is the typical delivery method and so on. You also have the option to add a set of tasks. Now, what this does is this will create those tasks whenever this course is scheduled. So whenever this course is scheduled, this task is created to book the venue. It's assigned to my colleague, Lauren. It'll start 60 days before the course starts and it'll be due 45 days before the course starts. And it'll work that out based on the start date of the course. then 7 days before the course, this task will start, which is to finalize the paperwork, and it will be due 5 days before the course starts. So whenever you grab that course template and schedule it into the platform, these tasks are created alongside of it. So it's really helpful to start to automate that process. Again, standardization and automation is really helpful for this. So if we choose that abrasive wheels in the workplace, and if we schedule this for the end of the year, we'll put this on the 1st of November, and let's just save that. What we'll have in our task section is we can see those 2 tasks have been brought over and have been created. So whenever that course is scheduled, those tasks are created. And again, assign to the correct person. And that's just works basically as a checklist. So the way we see customers use this is really helpful as a checklist, a standard checklist against each course template. The second way of creating tasks, and again, this taps into the automation in the platform, is using our workflow engine. Now, we're not going to go too far into the workflow engine here because we have separate sessions scheduled in for this, and we could talk about workflows all day. But with the workflows, if we just go to our administration section and go to our workflows, it is possible to automate tasks based on the workflow. Now, what this means is the workflows work in a way where when something happens, an action or an activities happen within the platform, that's going to trigger tasks to happen. Now, a use case for this we've seen quite heavily is for public courses. This is a set of tasks that we need to go through. Whereas in-house courses, this is a set of tasks that need to be completed, and they may vary. So what that means for the course template is you can have one course template, but then the task list will vary dependent on the situation, dependent on the scenario that happens in the platform. So that's where the workflow really comes into its own, is if you want to have varying task lists based on certain parameters. So perhaps you run a course at a particular venue where you would want to have one set of tasks to be created. Whereas if it's in-house, it will be slightly different. That's where workflows can really help the productivity in the platform, is it's automating those tasks that you might be doing manually. So this one here, for example, just a very basic task, new course available. When the course status has been changed to available, it's going to create a task. So rather than it sending an email, the action is going to be to create a task. And then in here, we set the parameters. So it's going to create a task. It's going to be mapped to the right people. It's going to map to the trigger object. And this is basically what we see in the course template section: priority, progress, status, subject, type, and due date. But rather than sending an email through a workflow, we're going to create a task. So we just take that back a step. We'll just create a new task in here. So we've got our workflow set up. So in here, we're going to check the profitability. The action name, rather than creating a note, we're sending an email message, we're going to create a task. And then we can go through the process. So we're going to change that to function. So this is when the task will be created. So 1 minute after the current date time. It's going to be linked to accessplanit. I'm the creator, so I'm the overall owner, so to speak, of this task. We're going to map it to the trigger object. So what that means is when that workflow's created, it's created because this course has changed to available. We want that task to live against that course. So it's going to map to the trigger object. So that's what the map to is. You can create a task that's then mapped to something else in the platform. That can happen. But in this instance, and typically, this is the usual way to do it. And then we go through when this task is created. This will be the priority. The progress is 0. The status is not started. The subject is quite simply check the profitability. The type is a to-do. And then we can add a field for due date as well. And again, we want that to be a function. So whenever this task is created, there might be hundreds of instances of this task. It's going to change pertinent to whatever's just triggered it. So 7 days before the course start date. So whenever that trigger object up here activates the task, it's going to look at the start date and it's going to be 7 days before. And then we can hit save. So that's the task created. So again, just putting the parameters in, whenever a course now is marked as available, it will create the task. Now, that's slightly different from the course template, because whenever a course is scheduled, it creates the task list if you do the tasks in course templates. However, some people have the workflow where they want to create these courses as provisional first, before it gets confirmed by a resourcing department or somebody checks it and says, yeah, that's fine. So actually the provisional course shouldn't trigger the task list, but only when they're available. That's a really good use case for why you might do it this way. So they're the 3 ways of creating tasks. And just to take a step back and run through these. So we have the manual way of creating tasks, which you can do on the fly, really good for ad hoc tasks in the platform. Create them, right click and add task, assign them to your colleague, pass it over to somebody else. You then have the ability to create tasks against course templates. Really good if every time you schedule a course, you have the exact same tasks, even if it's just a few. Really handy just to automate that process. And the final part is in your workflows up at the top right, where you can create a task list. You can create tasks automatically based on certain conditions being met. So again, a really handy way of doing it through workflows, and something we're seeing people do more and more, because what that means is when the certain parameters are met, the course is marked as available, it's 2 weeks before the course and it's not profitable, these tasks are automatically kicking in the background to really move that automation on for you. So in terms of these tasks, we've talked about creation. We talked about how we make these tasks in the platform, what different ways we have. The next part is actually completing them and managing them. So we've done the creation, we now manage the tasks. So we have the separate module for tasks on the left-hand side, and there's 2 things we're going to go through here. The first part is we've got a data grid. Again, very, very similar to how we had it before. Columns across the top. We can change these in here. So we want to see the subjects assigned to username. We've seen customers use description in tasks. So people are adding notes almost to the task using that description box. That's a really handy one to add in if you don't have it already. It's actually called details. There you go. Slight slip from me. The details of the task as well. Again, it can vary from customer to customer depending on how you use it, but this can be really handy. Again, using filters, so seeing overdue tasks, a very common one, which ones don't have, which one aren't complete and were due in the past, very common one here. My tasks, so the data grid is really good to give you the overview. If somebody's off sick or somebody's on annual leave, you can see every task that they might have assigned to them. And again, which ones are due this week. My task during the next 7 days. Got to send a quote to Lancaster, so straight away I can see that. So that's managing tasks at a high level, a step back view. Here. We do have another functionality here, and this is new over the kind of last 12 to 18 months, which is this board view. If anyone's used tools like Trello or any kind of management tool like that, this is very similar. So you have the different stages, the different statuses for the task across the top, and then you have the tasks underneath. So in here I can add a task. Again, that quick add function comes back, but I can also move them. So if I know I've just followed up on this particular task, I can just move it over here to waiting. So I can manage as an administrator in the platform. I can be more productive by managing my own tasks here. So this all-in-one aspect of the platform, I can manage everything here. And I don't even have to create tasks that are pertinent to courses. I can just create tasks on the fly that I just want to assign to me because this is where I'm going to do all my work. So really helpful for an individual as well as the step back senior approach. And the final point I want to make in this section for you here, and something I really encourage everybody to do, is just think about these task statuses. So let's go into this one that's in progress. So we have these statuses here: completed, deferred, in progress, not started, waiting, and so on. This is configurable. So you can decide what statuses tasks have. So if you want to make this a bit more custom for your business, you can configure this. So in the top right in administration, you have custom list items. What that means is the drop downs. So quite often you'll have things for if you use opportunities in the platform, different sales stages, and different communication types, but we also have in here for tasks as well. So I might want to add a new task status in here. So accessplanit on hold, example, and let's make that enabled. And when I go back to my task section, I just right click and edit that task, we'll be able to see from the status, accessplanit on hold. And again, it's really making this more configured. You might want to change completed to done. Even if it's just your terminology, that can really help with adoption across the business. So just to recap on tasks and creation, 3 different ways: manual, course templates, or workflows. And I strongly encourage you to take a look at workflows and speak to your customer success manager or speak to the support team about how you can start to introduce them, because it's really good for starting that automation and bringing tasks that might be sticky notes that get passed around the office. I don't think people do that anymore post-COVID, but that kind of way of working, bringing that into a centralized area and reducing that administration. The next part is managing the tasks. The task view here has that step back approach. You can see everything that's going on. Use those filters wisely. Make sure they're showing you the information that you need to see. And then also from an individual level, so to talk to your administrators about, is the different task list here. Seeing the different statuses. Okay. So we've got 2 more parts to go through today, which is the notes section. And then we'll have a look at how we tie this together using our dashboards. So on the left-hand side, we have our notes tab. So our notes in the platform, very similar to tasks. You can use them against users, accounts, course templates, course dates, invoices. You can delegates as well. You can quickly add tasks, quickly add notes to, should I say. So the notes main data grid is here. And you can see all the different notes that have been created. This is very commonly used for courses. If there's anything you want to share with the trainers, and if the trainers have the My Teaching access where they can go into their own portal, they can pick up the course notes as well. So let's go to a course, for example. And we want to add a note to this first aid course we've just scheduled in December. So we're using that quick add function. I can choose what type of note this is. This is a recent development actually from accessplanit, and it's really handy for visibility in the data grid. I'll come on to that in a second as to what I mean by that. But it's really handy to start categorizing notes, because if you've got somebody, let's say head of finance, wants to go in and see something related to payments, they can quickly see that. And they can get that on the dashboard, and they can get that in the data grid, which we'll take a look at in a second. But this works in exactly the same way as those task statuses, where you can create different note types in the custom list items area. So really, really strongly encourage you to take a look at this, because it can be really handy to, again, bring it all together within the platform. So this is just some booking info. So overdue payments, let's say, on 2 delegates here. Payment issue. And then in here, I can say, yeah, trainers can access this note. All right, so we don't want our trainers to know that there's 2 overdue payments. It's not for them to worry about. That's for us to worry about. You can decide whether trainers should access that note or not. And then I can hit save. So again, I'm adding these notes in the background. And if I go into that course now, I can see all the notes that have been added to that particular course. And what type of notes are they? This works really well in the smart grids and the delegates. Again, same principle as the course. So let's say John Adamski, social media marketing on a course in 2018. Again, I want to add a note to John's record. This is delegate feedback. So John was late to the session and read to staff. Just so we've made a note on here, delegate feedback, and we can save and close. And again, trainers can access those notes if you've given them the access as well. So again, this kind of information is really handy to be storing in the platform, because when I go to the notes section, I can see all of those notes that have been created. And actually, I want to come in here, I want to see the delegate feedback. They're not the surveys, more the information that we've put. So again, John was late session, delegate said he enjoyed the ladder section. Again, notes, information, things that are being passed around the business. This is really helping to bring that platform to an all-in-one state where a business is working on it, everything's visible, and people can access the information they need to access. Again, if we just unapply that filter, perhaps I want to come in here and see all the payment notes. So map to the invoices here. I know this person is going to pay in 2 parts, promise to pay at the end of the month. Again, if you're an account manager, you can log those notes against the invoices and the finance person can be picking them up. So when they're viewing that invoice, it's overdue. It's due on the 14th, but nothing's been paid on it. As a finance person, I can go in and see if there's been any notes made. Yeah, Matt left a note, they'll pay it in 2 parts. Okay, so I can speak to him about that. So again, really helpful to bring that conversation into one place. I'm just conscious of time here. The final piece we want to look at after this is the dashboards. But just to recap on notes, very similar to tasks, can be created against records in the platform manually. You can also tie this into automation. So when something happens, when a delegate's cancelled, a note is automatically created. That can happen. Typically, we see people using the quick add against different records, whether it's a delegate, an invoice, a course, and then tying that together using the filters and the data grid. Okay. So the final part is just tying this all together with dashboards. Again, we do quite a few sessions on dashboards, so it won't go into this in too much detail. But once you've been creating notes, you've been creating tasks, is bringing that onto the dashboard. So just to start off with the data grid conversation we had earlier on and the discussion we had around this, those data grids can be brought into the dashboard, filtered down and trimmed down. And I always suggest that the best thing about the dashboard, the way you know you've got it optimized to the right level, is if you come in on a Monday morning after a weekend and the dashboard tells you everything that you need to see. So everything that you need to get to, the information you need to get to is presented back to you. You don't need to go away and start finding that information on a regular basis. It's all there for you. I do also suggest that sometimes less is more. So sometimes we've had people where it's just data and data and data, and sometimes it's quite difficult to see what you need to see jump out at you. So again, don't try and have too many columns in here. Keep it nice and concise on the dashboard, and that will make the information you do see a lot more important. So once you've got these data grid gadgets, again, we've got different sessions on dashboards if you want to book onto those, but this was just going to highlight how we can use this in relation to productivity. So we have our data grid gadgets at the top. Then in here, we can see those payment notes. So again, if I'm a finance person, I want to come in, I want to see straight away, all of our payment notes have been created this year. So again, I can go through here, I can see all these invoices, I've got notes against them. I can go in and preview that invoice, edit the invoice, I can see all that kind of thing from here. And the same if I'm in charge of certification, I can see that on the right-hand side as well. We can also do this, we'll just create one gadget whilst we're here. Let's add a new area for our tasks. So let's say on the gadget, on the dashboard, we're managing tasks, we've rolled these out and everyone started to use tasks in the business. I'm going to add a data grid gadget because I want to see all those overdue tasks in the last 7 days. So we'll give this a header, overdue tasks. Quick recap on this, auto refresh interval. Unless you're leaving the dashboard static on a screen, it won't refresh, but you can turn this on. Most people, day-to-day work, they don't need to have it on, so I'd always suggest leave it disabled, otherwise the platform's just processing constantly. Auto height, as we saw in that last dashboard, every gadget had its place. It's all neatly and tidily put in its place. Auto height, if you have 1,000 records, that the gadget should display, it'll go all the way down to the bottom. So again, it will ruin your nice organization. I always leave it unticked because I like to put things in the right place, but completely up to you. The module for this one, I was going to look at the task section. And then we choose the columns. So this is very, very similar to how we were looking at those data grids at the start. We're not too bothered about date created. Again, be really strict about which columns you pull through. Only pull through the minimum because it makes the information more impactful. So we want to see the subject, the status, the due date. We're not overly bothered about who created it. We want to see who it's assigned to. And let's see what it's mapped to as well. So that's the object, the trigger object. So whether it's a course, a delegate, an invoice, that's the map to label. So we add our filters. So we only want to see ones that are not completed. It's been completed, we don't care, it's done. So we don't want to see ones that are completed. And we want to see ones that were due in the last 7 days. As you can see, by the way, when we add filters, because this is a date field, that's going to be the information that's going to be supplied, that operator, how we can filter changes as well. So let's see everything in the last 30 days that's not completed. And there we go. So now we can see our overdue tasks. So in here, I know that Lauren has got an overdue task. I've got an overdue task for Chase Hogarth for invoices, but that's been deferred. So might nothing be happening with that one. Then there's 3 here that are unassigned. So I need to go through and make sure somebody is assigned to confirm the trainer, confirm the venue, and confirm the course. So once you've rolled out this productivity, the notes, the tasks, the data grids, make sure you tie it back together by using the dashboard and rolling that out and making sure everybody's on board with using the platform. Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes left. Does anyone has any questions, do feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. Whilst you're putting any questions in there, but we'll just go back to the PowerPoint. So what we've gone through today is data grids best practice. Make sure you use filters, share those filters across the business. When you reach any particular data grid, make sure you change the columns, you move it around, and it's working for you. Again, that's not going to change it for any other administrator. It's just your user record. Tasks, 3 ways of creating tasks: manually, via course templates, or through workflows. And the management of tasks using that data grid, drawing on the skill set we built up using those data grids to filter, to trim down the data grid, and using that Kanban board as well for an individual view. Similar for notes, use that note type, make sure you configure the note type so it's working for your business, start to bring that all in one functionality across the business as well. And then finally, tie all that together, bring it all back together using the dashboards, displaying notes, tasks that are overdue, tasks that are upcoming, using those data grid skills that you've built up by filtering and trimming down that data grid to show key information. If there are any questions, coming up next, we've got a Workflows Fundamentals training session that's taking place next week. Unfortunately, that's sold out. However, we do have places left on our Workflows Masterclass that's running from Thursday the 9th of June through to the Thursday the 23rd of June. That's 3 sessions and a coaching session as well, so it's a bit more in depth. And it's really, really good to kind of get under the skin of workflows and start to really bring those out into the platform. We do have a new admin fundamentals. That's a crash course over accessplanit for any new administrators you may have. That's on Wednesday, the 22nd of June at 3 p.m. Any more information you want on these, we've got a URL there at the bottom for accessplanit.com/upcoming-customer-events. We will be releasing some more optimization sessions, some more workshops like today. And we're just currently working on the next sets that we'll be putting out there, and that will be coming over the next few days. So keep your eye on that, and we'll be releasing those dates to you very, very shortly. But final thing for me is thank you very much for everyone for joining today. I hope you found today useful. And if you've got any questions, do feel free to get in touch with us, either through your customer success manager or through our support team as well. Look forward to seeing you at the next one. Hope you have a great week and speak to you soon.